Hello and welcome to Coffee with Candice. I'm your host, Candice Mama. I am truly so excited for today's guest. Mike Fannin is possibly one of the most fascinating human beings I've had the privilege of speaking to in a very, very long time. Mike is the founder of Carrick Wealth, which is one of the fastest growing financial advisory firms in Africa. He also runs multiple other businesses. But outside of his incredibly successful business portfolio, what really gets me about Mike is the person he is. So, if you like this podcast, as usual, like, share, and subscribe. And without further, I was so nervous. I was like, no, I've been so excited for this. There is not going to be a typical glitch. No, I refuse.
No stress, no stress. All good. We're on. So we're rocking and rolling.
Oh, how are
Good.
you, Mike?
Thanks for having me.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Just cranking away. Life is busy. We've got so many things that are on and moving it, and so many projects, but it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be around and alive. Life is full of challenges, and challenges make things exciting.
Oh, I love that you say that actually, because, okay, firstly, I want to thank you because I know how busy you are. Like when you said yes, I was so honored because I was, I was kind of like, hey, will you be on my podcast? And then I kept on following up with these WhatsApps. And when you said yes, I was like,
no, totally cool. Very, very, very cool. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
oh, thank you. And you actually touched on something where you were speaking about challenges, right? And we are living in a challenging time right now. And so when I was preparing for our interview, obviously I consumed like all information about Mike Fannin online. Not in a stalkerish way. But one of the interviews you did, I think it was with Vusi Tembekwayo, you were speaking about, how this COVID time is actually a time of challenge, but it's exciting.
Yeah.
And when you said the word exciting, I was like, huh.
Okay.
So have you always thrived in situations like this? Have you always been someone who looked for challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I work best under pressure. I think that there's an old saying, what makes a diamond? It's time and pressure. And I find that when there's situations which are challenging, demanding, you feel like you can't be, it brings the best out in people because, you've got nowhere to go. The first thing that people forget is, when those situations happen, you come through that, they say, oh, it's so fantastic. Look what you did. You're going, you didn't do anything. You had nowhere to go. Your back's against the wall. And that brings out everything you've got. You can either curl up and die or you can come out fighting. So I kind of thrive on those because, it accesses parts of me that are not always there, that I'm not always aware of, that I'm not always used to. And as a result, I get to find out things about myself that are sometimes quite exciting. So COVID for me was, everybody it was just this massive meltdown, and it's been scary and it's been horrible and it's been terrible. People have lost jobs, people have lost lives. But in the same breath, it's the all-time greatest time in the world to reset yourself. Because it's the biggest excuse ever. You could say, right, I'm resetting COVID. Get rid of everything you didn't want to do, get rid of all the rubbish in your closet, and start fresh. It's the best time in the world to say, hey, I'm just going to start again, because nobody's going to blame you, nobody's going to ask any questions, nobody's going to point a finger at you if you fail. You can take all those risks. It's just this. It's like a get out of jail free card without anybody pointing fingers at you. So I found it very exciting. We started 3 new businesses during COVID. And we just sort of thought, let's just go for it. What's worse that can happen? They close. Okay, well, we tried.
I love that. I love that. And that's such a specific mindset to have, Mike. And so I almost wonder, is this a mindset you've always had, like since you've been you, or is this something that you've accumulated over time?
For me, I think it's always, I think about, when my career started, I left South Africa in 97 after getting my degree, and I went to London. And my first job in London was with the investment banks, and I lasted, I think, 9 months working for these banks. And I just thought, I don't want to do this for a living. This is not good. It's bad for your soul. And I started my first business there. And, starting a business in London at a time when London was firing on all cylinders, it was really the height of a massive economic boom. We were coming up to the tech boom was happening, 98, 99, 2000. So there was so much happening. It was challenging. And as a result, I went through some really, really rough times. I always, people always say, oh, you're lucky you're an entrepreneur. I always tell the story. I was sitting having lunch on Trafalgar Square with a client. And as I was sitting there, we had this business we'd started, and I poured everything I had into it, and I'm running through in my head the numbers. And I realized at that point, I have no more money, but no more money. There's no credit cards that are going to work. There's nothing. I actually can't pay for lunch. So I'm sitting there with this guy, and I say, look, you go off. I've got to meet another client, and I'll pick up lunch. I had to phone a friend to come down and pay for my lunch. And that was that moment where you can either curl up in a corner, or I'm going to come out fighting. And that happened. London there was a lot of those sort of experiences that I got beaten a lot, and as a result of it, it built this desire always, when the chips are down, to come out guns blazing as hard as possible. And I think that's where it mostly comes from. It's that I never say die, and almost I get excited about it. I get excited about those challenges, like I said, because they bring out a quite interesting part of me, which I quite like.
Oh, and it actually speaks to the quotes I discovered that I think were on your Facebook page. And one of them is Winston Churchill. I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul. I think I said that.
William Ernest Henley.
Oh.
William Ernest Henley. It's my favorite poem of all times. It's a poem called Invictus. And if you read the whole poem, it's actually quite dark, and it really talks to being completely beaten down. I can't even remember the exact terms, but it talks about the how being bloodied but unbowed, and that kind of concept of just saying no matter what happens, no matter what it throws at me, I'm not going down. I'm not going to go down. And I think it comes down to in business or in life. I have a great friend who has a saying. He always said, people and things only have the power over you that you give them. And if you think about that, that you give them, and I don't give that power to anybody. I'm not going to give that away. I'm not going to give them that right to make me feel beaten, downtrodden, not good enough to anybody. That's my choice. And the second you have that, my power, I choose, changes the whole dynamic altogether.
Oh, but I'm sure there are days, Mike, like when your mind is clearly very powerful, but aren't there days where you just feel like today's just a rough day, and you just want to curl up in that corner and be like, no.
But you know what? Here's the thing. There's a great thing. People talk about on days when you take and you just cut off. They say, you've been selfish. And selfish is just a terrible term that society started putting on people when they took time for themselves. And I don't believe in selfish. I believe in self-care. And I think in order to be able to go out and go to battle, sometimes you've got to have a day where you say, you know what, today's just not the day. Today's actually not the day. I'm going to have a self-care day. I'm not going to go to war today. I'm going to put the battle shield down. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to order a pizza. I'm going to watch some television. And I'm just going to reset. I'm just going to recharge. I'm going to read a good book. I'm not going to think about business. I'm not going to do any personal growth things. I'm not going to go to the gym. I'm just going to have a day where I just reset. And those are good. You need them. When they say, like, I do a lot of training and that sort of thing, and the most important part of training is rest. You don't rest, you don't grow. So, if you think of all that sort of thing, that day where you say, you wake up one day and you think, today is not it. Sometimes listen to your body. Maybe your body's saying, hey, you know what, today isn't it. Today you need to take a rest, and then do it. And delve into that self-care process and, grow.
Oh, that's powerful. I think that is so. And when you were speaking about training, because I know you compete in high endurance, competitions like the Ironman, which takes a lot. So, I want to actually speak about that like a little bit later in the interview. But I think when you speak about rest, that is so powerful, right? Because I think in today's society of hustle, I think we end up leading to burnout. And then I think recuperating and recovering from setback almost becomes that much harder, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we're conditioned not to show that we get hurt, that we get knocked down, that we're tired. We're taught that that's something you shouldn't do. And, I think you should. I think it's more than okay. It's actually necessary. It's actually a vital part of your growth process. It's breathing. You don't always just breathe in. You've got to breathe out. Okay, there's a balance. There's a in nature, it's all about balance. There's a symbiosis between all things. So you can't just go. You've got to have an off time. And you'll see over and over again. The guys. My age. I'm in my late 40s. This is when I have mates now who are having heart attacks and getting into real trouble because they just won't stop going. You know, they devote everything in one angle, and they just won't take a foot off every now and again, and that's where it's going to catch you.
Hmm. And Mike, going back, I really want to go back to like teenage Mike, going into this
Yeah.
big world, right? When did you decide that
Okay.
business was for me? Like, was this something that you always kind of knew that I want to be independent and work for myself? Or was this something that
No.
came as you were like, going through university?
So indulge me. It's quite an interesting story. I started university studying law because everyone always said, you're a talker and you can argue, be a lawyer. And after a year, I found out that law was about paperwork, and I hate paperwork. So I dropped out of my first degree at university, and I opened a clothing shop, and I used to sell clothing. And then I had a nightclub. And then I decided to, use what God gave me, and I became a bouncer and a bodyguard. That was my profession. So I'd given away everything in terms of careers and everything. And the one night I was standing at the door of a nightclub, and a guy came up and spoke to me, and we started chatting. And then she said to me, he said, "Why are you here?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You don't belong at this door." I said, "Well, thank you." He said, "I'll tell you what I want you to do." He said, "I want you to come to my house on Wednesday, and you need to bring a bottle of whiskey, and I'm going to judge you on that whiskey." He said, "So if you buy the most expensive one, I'm going to think you're an idiot. You buy the cheapest one, I'm going to think you're cheap. So you got to think about it." I said, "Okay, I'll buy it." And off I go, and I arrive at this guy's house, and I walk in, and he's got a cigar for me and a whiskey, and I'd never had a cigar. This was exciting. I was 21. And it turns out this guy was an ex-Wall Street trader. He'd been on Wall Street during the heyday from 84 right through to 93 and lived this incredible life. And that entry fee of a whiskey and a cigar, we would sit every Wednesday night, and he would tell me the stories of this amazing life. And it's truth is stranger than fiction, and those stories are far stranger. And eventually, after 3 months of this, I said, "Why are you telling me this?" He said, "Because at the end of this year, you're going back to university, you're going to double major in accounting and economics, and then after that, you're going to London." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, that's what you should be doing. So that's what you're going to do. I said, "Okay, cool, let me do that." And that was where it all changed. I had somebody who believed in me and said, "You know what? I'm not going to do it for you, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a push." And that literally, it was a change of everything. Until then, I had no direction.
That is a great story. That is absolutely amazing. And I love it because it really, I don't know if you've ever read like The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell, and basically speaks about like how the hero starts and where, he has this downfall and then how he comes up again. And I think for me, your story touches on so many of those points, right? Because looking at you today, in today's context, it's easy to be like, oh, Mike just looks like someone who always knew. He always knew. He just had that conviction of knowing, and just knowing that you bumped into someone, but also you made the decision to go. You could have just decided not to go, right? You could have been like, "Oh, whatever, I'm not going to go buy a bottle of whiskey for this guy," And
so there's two great things there. Number one, you never know. I'm 48 years old. I still don't know. Okay, because you know what, tomorrow is different, and there'll be a new thing tomorrow, and there'll be a new change, there'll be something new and exciting, and I'll probably have a new career in 2 years again. I don't know, but you never know. This is me. What you got to do is you've got to be open to the signals that say, "Hey, here's an opportunity." So you've got to be looking at all times. You've always got to be open to it. And what I always say, I always liken it to having, pots of. Have you ever percolated coffee? So if you put a whole lot of pots of water on the wall and you drop a bean into each one, and you watch them, you don't influence them, you don't try and put yourself onto it, you just sit back and you watch. And some will start to percolate, and those are those ideas you start to look at a little bit closer. Some start to brew really good coffee. Those are the ones you start taking meetings with and listening to people and delving into. But you watch all 100 pots, okay? Some of them won't do anything, and you go, "Okay, that one wasn't for me," and you leave it alone. But always be open to those, because that's life. I've lost count of the careers I've had, the changes I've had, the businesses I've had. It hasn't always been one thing. And at different times, I've wanted to do different things and have explored that, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. But that's what we're here to do. We're here to explore ourselves. I think that's my opinion. That's kind of what the whole point is. Otherwise, why? Sitting one job, punching a spreadsheet, I can't.
But what do you think keeps people away from looking at these different opportunities? Because I think what you're saying is so powerful, but so many people don't do it, right? Is it a specific skill set, or like, is there a thing that keeps people from doing it?
It's the thing that stops us doing everything. It's fear. Everything that we do is curtailed by fear. The reason that you forget your career, the reason you don't go and buy a drink for the beautiful girl at the bar, fear. The reason you don't pick up the phone and phone that person who said, phone me, I've got an opportunity for you. Fear, I'm not going to be good enough. I'm going to be rejected. I'm not going to be the person that, in your partner, don't tell your partner what you're thinking because you're worried they're not going to like you. They're not going to think you're good enough. They're going to judge you. Fear, 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 fear. And if, again, so come back to this, the power that we give fear that power and you're done. That's it. So and I'm not saying I've got it right because I haven't. I fight it every single day. But if you consciously say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to, go out and do it afraid. Do it afraid. Go out there in sense of fear. That's when you're in a good place because you're going to grow. Okay? You're going to grow. You're going to learn something. I don't know if it's going to work out, but you're going to learn something.
Oh, I love that. And I love you saying, do it anyway, because the amount of times I'll hear people saying to me, like, I want to do this, but I'm still afraid, so I'm not going to do it. And I always think to myself, if it means that much to you, you will always be afraid. And therefore it means you will never, ever do it, right?
Totally.
So is this, okay.
Even more.
Go on, sorry, Mike.
Carry on.
No,
but even more so, it's imagine that fear. Think of the short fear. Okay, I'm not doing it now. Imagine the fear of spending the rest of your life wondering, what if? You wake up for the next 20 years saying, I should have gone and bought that bottle of whiskey for that guy. And I'm still standing punching people at the door of a nightclub. That's where I was, So, that would have been a fear. The fear of all the stuff. And, I got lucky. I got given some great talents. Imagine wasting those. Imagine never finding out. That Muhammad Ali, it's my favorite saying, I'll show you how great I am. Just find out how great you are. Find out what you got. So take all those things you're talking about, getting yourself under pressure and learning, because pressure brings out the best in you, not giving away the power to other people and doing it afraid. Now you're onto something interesting.
So when you look at like your career trajectory so far, and you look at, where you started, thinking you were going to be a lawyer and being like, nope, the nightclub, the clothing store, the bouncing in the club. What do you feel was the common thread for you in all those businesses? Do you feel like there was something that you consistently had throughout all of them?
Yeah, I can't work for people. I can't. It's not that I wouldn't say I have a problem with authority, but I'm really arrogant. So I struggle to listen to, I've got to make the mistakes myself. I have a great business partner who laughs. He always says I'm the hardest person he's ever had to work with, but it's because he gives me a space to go and explore. And every now and again, you'll see me shoot off an angle and go, hey, Mike, no, don't go there, come back, But it's not being microed, it's not being squashed, and that's I can't. So I've always been in my own businesses because I can't be managed. I just struggle with it so much. It's just not me, but that's who I am. I don't need that in my life.
Oh, that's great. But I love that you're so self-aware.
You have to be. No, but again, there's parts of me that I accept who I am, and I've learned that through many trial and errors and those things. And there are places that I still want to be better and places that I want to change. But I also know there's some pretty much base character traits that, I'm so stubborn. So, that's not going to change in a hurry as much as I'd like to. And if I try and change it, I'm probably going to be unhappy. So I'd rather try and find an environment and work in a space that works to my strengths. We've got, what the Bible says, 70 it's 70 years. That's it. Okay, so if I waste it in any way, shape, or form, what am I going to do? I'm trying to put myself the square peg into a round hole. Just don't do it. And that's the thing. That's what most of us do. Back to that fear. We pick somewhere that's safe and secure, that doesn't challenge us, doesn't grow us. And we spend the rest of our lives wondering what if. And I just find that sad. Like I want to cry when I see people sitting there so unhappy. I think, oh, come on, man. Just go do something different. Just read that different book. Do a breathing exercise in the morning that'll change the way you think when you go to work. Just do that. Can you imagine what 20 minutes of a meditation would do? Or go for that walk to lose that weight, or whatever, but do something, instead of sitting in that rut.
So it seems as though from the undertones of our conversation, it feels as though you're someone who has a belief in something. I don't know if that is spirituality, religion, a higher being of some sort. Am I getting it correctly?
Yeah. There's definitely something bigger than me. I think,
Are you
you know,
sure?
I always
Kidding.
said, yeah. I said, my thing has always been, if you look at the expanse of the universe and just how big it is, I think it's naive to believe we're the only things there. And I also think it's naive to believe we're the smartest. So, you know, what that is, what that greater power looks like and how you define it, you know, that's, I think to me, that's everybody's personal journey, you know, and, you know, you've got to come good with that. At the end of the day, you're the only person who's going to be answering for it. So, you know, you've got to be at a place where you're comfortable and good. But yeah, there's definitely a higher power than me. But I think my duty to that is to whatever gifts I got given to utilize those and live with them. You know, that's the trade-off. You get given this thing, you say, here's this great earth, there's all this opportunity and fun. Use what you were given. Don't waste it.
Using what,
because I think you're going to get asked.
Yeah.
You're going to be made accountable at some stage.
Yeah. It makes me think of, I don't know if you know the speaker Les Brown, and he basically has this talk whereby he speaks about, you know, when you're lying on your deathbed in a hospital, and he says then all these ghosts start to visit you, and the ghost of writing your book, the ghost of, you know, and he speaks about like, what are you going to answer to them? And then when all of them say, but you had us in your hands, like, why didn't you utilize us, you know? And I think
and resonate with that, just sit with it. I mean, that just brings, like, I get a cold shiver. That's like dread. You know, I'll give you one. I used to play a lot of piano when I was a kid, like, and I was pretty good. And one of my things recently, I've got this driving urge to go and buy a piano and start playing again, because it's a gift I'm not using, and it's bothering me more and more and more and more, because it just sits there going, you know, you can do this, and I'm going, yeah, okay, let's go buy a piano. But that's it. It sits there. And that for me right now, that would be something standing at the edge of the bed going, hey, what did you do with it?
Wow. So Mike, you know, you have a lot of talents, right? You know, these expertise and skills you gifted in, I would say. Some people will say, well, I've just got so many gifts, Mike, where on earth do I start? Like, I don't know where to start. Maybe I should be a piano player. Maybe I should be this, you know. What do you say to people like that?
Doesn't matter. Just start. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You know, what most people do is they say, I don't know where to start. And that's the biggest excuse ever. Just start. You know, just put one foot in front of the other, and you'll find that something didn't work. Okay, well, then do another. Try something. Find something there's be one of them that you'll flip there and think, I'd really like to do that. Go and do it. But, you know, there's a million reasons we can say why not, except for the one big reason why. And that's the only one that really matters.
Oh,
it really is.
That's,
you know, it's just sitting there, and it's staring you in the face, going, "Here, pick me." I don't know.
Wow. And I watched one of your interviews, and you were speaking about, you know, you have one of the fastest growing financial advisory firms in Africa, right? Carrick Wealth. And so you were speaking about like getting into wealth. You really wanted to help people. You wanted to help people, you know, get around their financial lives. Is that still a passion of yours? Is that still something that drives you today?
Yeah, I mean, when we set Carrick up, our goal was to change the face of financial services in Southern Africa. And, you know, we were, at the end of last year, we were announced as the best advisory firm in South Africa, which has just happened in 6 years. And it's because we've had this driving passion, not to only manage better, but to do it better, to reconnect people with money, to get them past all these things that they're so scared of. You know, I always say to people, they spend 365 days a year making their money, and most of them won't spend 4 hours a year managing it because they're just scared of it. You know, the numbers scare them, the concepts scare. So we really wanted to break that down, and it's a massive goal still. You know, I still do educational chats with youngsters, 21, 22, 23 years old, fresh out of varsity, where we just talk about the concept of money, because nobody teaches it. Nobody talks about, you know, what is this thing you should be doing savvy? How should you start? And all these different bits and pieces. So we really have tried to do that, and to make it something where, you know, we have a concept we call hospitality in our business, where the experience of our company must be like that of a concierge desk, where you actually feel like not only are you taken care of, but you're learning and you're connected. You actually want to be here. You know, I want my clients to go, yeah, I can't wait. I'm going to Carrick today. I've got a meeting today. That's how excited they should be, because they're getting, you know, they're managing the money, things are happening, and, you know, their lives going the way it should. That's hopefully what we're going to try and deliver, what we are delivering, I think.
Well, that's powerful, and congratulations. I mean, that's such a high accolade, right? That's incredible.
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't, I mean, for anyone who's listening to this interview, I don't think it's shocking after everything we've discussed that you would get like one of the best, awards, because they're like, yeah, I'd bet on Mike.
Thank you.
But
No, look, it's a passion of all of ours. And I've got, we're lucky that our company has passionate people who, have these driving desires to do something and to do things that are different. We just opened up in the UK now. We have a UK branch, and it's one of our people said, you know what? A lot of our people are moving back. I'm going to go there. We had a lot of clients who were British, who were living in South Africa and moved back to the UK. Said, I'm going to go and take care of them. And off she went. And we now have a branch and it's up and running. So there's, it's just people are really passionate about doing this thing. And that's, I'm very blessed to be surrounded by people like that and work with them.
Oh, I love that. And you mentioned that you give talks, or you help facilitate conversations with like 21-year-olds, people that are still young and starting their financial journey. What do you think is the biggest problem people that are starting in their careers make once they start making money?
Well, there's a belief that tomorrow never comes. So you know what? I'm going to go out tonight because tomorrow never comes. I just have a pizza tonight and I'll start saving tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes. And you wake up and you're 30 or you're 40 or you're 50, and all those days in between were great fun, but they're gone. And it's not that difficult to get yourself in a position in life where you've provided enough to make sure that you're going to be taken care of. And it's a scary, this is my pet sort of, there's a statistic that says out of 28-year-olds today, okay, 1 in 100 will be able to take care of themselves in retirement. 3 will be living with friends and family. 27 will be dead, funny enough, which is quite scary, but the rest will be in very deep trouble. And that's horrifying. You're talking about a lot of people who are going to be starving. We don't have the facilities in this country, unfortunately, where we can take care of people like that. We can't help, if you haven't got any money, you're on your own. And, it's incumbent upon us to try and teach people that if you start now, start early and get cracking, then it's actually not a problem. You've just got to chip away and get it done. But this instant gratification, say, I'd rather buy an iPhone or whatever it is, instead of putting that cash, that's where you're going to run into trouble. So we hopefully try and help people to get past that and educate them through that.
Geez. And those statistics are actually quite scary when I think about them. And I think it's also, is it a quote that goes something like, people underestimate what they can achieve in a year and overestimate what they can achieve in 5 years, right? And I think it comes down to money as well. I think we're always projecting into the future. Like, 5 years from now, I'll be financially stable. 10 years from now, 15 years from now. And we make terrible financial decisions as we're living and making money, right?
Yeah. I remember the example I always like to give is, my brother, he's got this he lives in Ireland, but it's the same anywhere. So, on Friday nights, they have pizza night. And pizza night, they make their own pizzas. So here's the difference. If I was going to buy 4 pizzas for a family in South Africa, I'm probably going to pay, $100 a pizza or whatever. So that's 400 Rand. If I buy the makings or something like that, I'm probably going to get it at maybe 120, 130 Rand if I buy some bases and bits and pieces. So we're talking about $280 saved times by 4, we're up to $1,000 a month, times by 12,000 Rand a year, plus the compounding effect of interest. 10 years we're at 120,000 Rand, but it's compounded. If you're earning around 7% a year, you're going to get up to probably around 300-400 grand. Maybe a little bit less, 300 grand, let's call it. But, that's just not buying pizza. Okay. What happens if I cycle to the shop instead of going on my car? What happens if it's just those little bits and pieces. You start to look for the little bits of chips and changes that you can take off, and there's plenty for everybody. That's where you start to make the difference. And you know what? Right now in South Africa, it's really tough. It's all well and good me sitting here saying, I've got a good earning job and all those bits and pieces. And a lot of people say, I don't know what but the fact is, wherever you're at, you can either stand there and say, hey, you know what, I can't, or you can try. And you have to try, because there's no pension fairy coming when you turn 65. Oof. Nobody's going to come wave a wand and say, here you go. That doesn't exist. So if you don't do that, if you don't make that effort, let's say you only get halfway there, you're still halfway further than you would have been. And it's imperative that people make this choice within themselves. It's my my pet fear in terms of people when I meet them is their pensions and their savings. That's where it's going to catch them. Everything else you can kind of sort out. But when you're retired, most companies have a 65 cutoff. You turn 65, you're automatically retired. Go and try and get a job in South Africa now as a 65-year-old. Go knock on a door and say, "Hi there, I'm 65. I'd like to work for you." They go, "No ways, no ways." Go and try and get a loan from the bank saying, "I want to start a new business." That's a scary place to be.
Oof. I mean, when you break it down like that and you speak about, because I'm thinking like you're speaking about a box of pizza, right? And I think it is those small transactions we make on a day to day, like, getting a Starbucks coffee instead of making coffee at home, deciding to eat this out versus making it within your own environment. And I don't think you see it, especially I think when you're in your 20s, early 30s, you're just kind of swiping away, just swipe.
Yeah, because that's the thing, and you're coded by society, by Instagram and everything to tell you that you've got to live in this instant gratification world where you get it now. People don't save. When I say save, like saying, "Hey, I want that phone," or whatever it is. Okay, so it's going to cost 14,000 Rand. So I'm going to save up. It's going to take me 18 months to save for my next cell phone. That's what most people should. That's what it's going to take them usually. You're talking about 700-800 Rand a month. It's a lot of money for most people. Who saves? No, I'll put it on my credit card. On your credit card, you're going to pay what, 22% interest on that, if you can pay it back. So that sense of saying, "Hey, you must have it now, buy it now," that's where you're going to run into trouble. And if you've got a situation where you've started a saving system where it comes off your salary automatically, beginning of every month, that 200-300, maybe 1,000 Rand is gone. Then you know what? If you find a way to go do all those other things within it, I don't mind. As long as your savings part is done, have as much fun as you want. But it's when that part hasn't been put aside, that's when you're going to run into trouble. Yeah, I think.
Well, I mean, it's powerful, Mike. And I also think that, at least in my family, I can only speak from a personal perspective. But I mean, we weren't taught like money health or, saving or, waiting. Like that's another thing. We weren't taught to wait, right?
Yeah.
You ask and you receive, or you work for it and you just buy it. And I feel like a lot of people are in that situation where you start making money, but no one actually has like someone who says, "Okay, you've just started making your first 10,000 Rand a month. This is how you use it."
Yeah.
Right? You think to yourself, "Oh, I'm making 10,000 Rand a month. Okay, now I can afford." Like the first thing that went through my mind when I started making money was all the things I could afford. It was like, okay, great. Now I can afford. And then for a while, I actually would go into these cycles of like 10,000 was no longer enough because I needed to make more money, because I was buying more things. And I'd assume.
Let me ask you a question, Candice.
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to ask you one question. Could you afford it, or could you afford the debt to buy it?
Oof. That's a good question. You see, I didn't even think of that. Like, I was just like, well, it's money.
Yeah.
So that's.
If you could afford it, you could buy cash. That's when you can afford it. When you've got to put it in a credit card, you can't afford it. You're borrowing.
Wow.
And that's a space most of us get caught in. We automatically say, "I can afford." Yeah, you can afford the debt. And that's not affording.
That's insane. Why do you think we don't get this kind of education though, Mike? Why is our schooling system not focused on educating us around something that is so crucial?
Wow. It's an area that's not my expertise, shall we say. I don't have children, out of choice. But I think that what happens is that your schooling or your education system try to provide you a base, and a broad enough base where they try and cater a little bit for everybody and things like that. But I firmly believe that there should be something teaching people the science of money. I mean, I'll give you another example of something I came across the other day. I didn't even know it existed in our tax system. There's a thing in this country called turnover tax companies, okay, for a startup business. Now, there's specific exclusions. You can't do it, like if you're in media, for example, you can't bill your media to it. But if you've got a little company, these things, as long as it doesn't turn over R1 million in a year, okay, you pay about 3% tax. So for your first $1 million, 3%. So for somebody who's starting out, okay, who makes say 300,000-400,000 Rand with a little business, whatever it may be, a trading business, putting it through that business is going to save them a fortune in tax. But nobody talks about it. There's no education on it. There's no, so yes, there is a space for that, and I don't know who picks up that gap. Is it the universities? Yep, you got degrees and that sort of thing, but I don't know. Maybe it's the financial advisors. We try and do it. We try and give people, as much advice as we can. But maybe the schools should. I just don't know how they do it, because it's the problem is in that environment. It's such a dynamic environment that your information, you've got to upgrade every single year. So now we say to teachers, you've got to go back and restudy. They're not being paid enough, so they can't afford it. So it's a much bigger question. So I don't have the answer. Yes, schools should do it. How we do it, I don't know.
It's one of those things that really you can't really give a definitive answer to, right? Because it's also our spending habits come many times from our homes, how we were raised with money, and whether we believe that money was a scarce, thing that you had to hold on to with dear life, or it was such a fluid thing that money just comes and goes, and so it's harder to unprogram yourself from that learning, I feel, than it is to pick up new habits, I think.
Completely. And, also depending on what part of society you came from, your people, I learned about black tax, and this freaked me out, is that people taking care, and you have to, this is a big thing, in my sort of society, we don't have that. We don't, your parents, we take care of them, but not to the extent that, that the black community does. And, we don't learn about that at university. You suddenly wake up and go, hang on, these people, this is not a joke. This is something these people need to do, and they've got to provide for it and got to create. So now that's a whole different sort of financial planning. It's shorter term because, the grandparents are older and all that. So again, how do you've got to get that knowledge, and then you've got to start planning for it. Because again, it's not just going to come down from, at some point, somebody's going to come and wave their wand and give it to you. So it's such a complex tough topic, I think, is what I'm trying to say, is that there's so many variables. What you've got to decide is, what is my position? What works for me? Where do I need to go? And then start. But you must start, because when you look at it, the mountain it's very big, very big. When you think of where you got to get to, but start. If you don't start, that's when you're going to be in real trouble.
So it's more like, endurance race than it is a sprint. Like, you're not trying
totally,
just
totally.
Be the Kenyan runner.
I'm not built for sprinting. Exactly.
That's fantastic. Mike, you spoke about, your Ironman. I mentioned it a little bit in the beginning. So you train for Ironman races. I mean, for most people, I'm tired just saying the word. I'm just like, oh my gosh. When did you get into it? Where did the interest come from?
So I had no interest in it. I had friends who'd done it. I used to be a competitive swimmer when I was a kid, so I could swim. But a lot of my mates said, you've got to do Ironman. And I hate running. I really, truly hate running. So when I moved back from London, I'd led an excessive lifestyle in London. So, I was smoking 40 to 50 cigarettes a day, and I was drinking every night and horribly overweight. And my secretary at the company that I worked with here in South Africa, she said to me the one day, she said, I've entered you for the 9.5 marathon. I said, are you crazy? I'm going to die. She said, Mike, if you don't run that race, you're going to die. I said, you're going to have a heart attack. And she got me in touch with there's a company here in Cape Town called Embark, a guy called Steve Atwell, and he takes people who've never exercised before through and gets them into shape. So he took me through and got me to run the 9.5 marathon, and I didn't die. And then a month later, he said, listen, we're starting in August. We've got this little thing. It's a half Ironman. We start training in August, and you race the half Ironman in January. Would you like to do it? I said, okay, let's try it. And then in September, he said, well, you've started for the half. The full Ironman's in April after that. Why don't you just do both? So I said, okay, fine, let's do it. The same sort of thing as I said, the challenge comes and you think, okay, let's find out. And that was a horrible year. It was a year of survival because I'm genetically not supposed to do things like Ironman. I walk around at 105 kilos. People who race triathlons at 75. But also one of an amazing growth year. Just finding out stuff that I just didn't know I could do. And the Ironman was the culmination of all that. They say when you finish the Ironman, the finish line is one of the most intimate spaces you will ever experience because there's no one on the finish line. There's no friends and family allowed. There's no one standing. And as you finish, you come across this line, the enormity of what you've just done hits you. And, I burst into tears. It was just, I'd had a year and I changed my entire life. So it was a big one. But in that theme, Ironman's been parked now. I'm onto a new one. So This year's challenge, triathlons have all been cancelled because of COVID. We can't go out, we can't go and do mass participation events. So I picked a new challenge. I've joined a boxing gym, and I'm learning to box. And the idea is that we want to find 28-year-old Mike, me 20 years ago, and do a white collar just to find out. So he will be stronger and faster than me, but I've got some experience and I've got some resilience, shall we say. So it's one of those little challenges I put to myself to go and find this and just see what happens.
Oh, that's incredible. Mike, there's a correlation that I'm finding between, how you challenge yourself within your physical body and how you approach your career. Like, does your personal life, in your opinion, does your personal life have to be in sync with your professional life in order to achieve the kind of stuff you've achieved?
I think in sync is a good word, but I think it's about, again, go back to who you are as a person. This is who I am. I'm a person who requires challenge. Otherwise I stagnate. My fiance always says to me, she gets very nervous when I get bored because she wonders that I'm going to go off and do something stupid, because she said, when I get bored, I'm terrible. When I'm busy, when I'm challenged, when I'm active, that's when I'm at my best. So it is in sync, but it's not a case of trying to keep them. It's just being who you are, being true to yourself. And that is who I am. It's always going to be who I am. And it's where I'm most happy and where I'm most comfortable. So I'm always going to have that in my life, where my business and personal is always going to be about something new, some new challenge that's pushing me and trying to learn a bit more about myself.
And would you say that there's certain success habits, I'll call them, that you incorporate into your day-to-day life that you find that, I'll say, normal people don't do?
I get up early. Okay. My fiance is on radio. Her show is at 5 to 6 in the morning. I get up at 4:30 with her, and I spend half an hour of time just loading up for the day. Not thinking specifically about what I'm going to do, but I want to be up. I want to be, I don't want to be lying in bed till 7, 8. So I get up and I train every single morning. I start my day with exercise, but that half an hour beforehand, where I just sit with my dogs, and just code in for the day, I find really, really beneficial. It's not a social media time. It's just a time of thinking about nothing, shall we say. It's not, I'm not sort of going, okay, here's my task for the day. It's just sitting and just being present and getting and loading up for the day. So that's a big one for me in terms of a daily habit. I'm also very selective in what I take on. I have a rule that I only really do things I really want to do. So, if there's something I don't like doing, I'll find somebody else and get them to do it. I'll pay them and employ them, because if I don't like doing it, I'm that kind of person where I'll do a bad job. So if I focus on things that I'm really good at and really like doing, I'm always going to be really, really efficient. And, and I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to be committed to it. So that's all I fill my life with. Anything else, I pass off as fast as possible. I hope my business partner doesn't hear me say that.
That's great. That's absolutely great. I love it. And again, it comes back to that self-awareness, right? Like that part of ourselves that sometimes we fight. We end up just fighting that version of ourselves instead of just embracing it and being like, I don't operate my best in this situation, but I know that when I'm optimal, I'm going to do a great job. Yeah. And so it's about staying in that optimal space, right?
Exactly. When I'm optimized, I'm unstoppable. I really, it's hard to, it's like a freight train, and it just goes. And when you let it off the leash, it just fires, and it's amazing because I'll just go. But when I'm not, I literally drift off because I get bored. I get disinterested like any other person. But I've learned to identify that and just stay away from anything that does that to me, because it's also counterproductive to my psyche. If I start doing that, it'll affect everything. I've got that, it goes out of balance in work. I've suddenly found out I haven't trained in 3 days because I've started to drift, your whole balance system, because you're not just being real true to yourself.
That's very interesting. I like that correlation. And you also work with high net worth individuals, right, through Carrick Wealth.
Yeah.
And this is the conversation that actually introduced us in the because I just want to give a small backstory to people who don't know. So Mike and I were actually at a small gathering, and he was speaking to someone next to me. And I remember it just piqued my ear. Like there was something that you guys were discussing, that piqued my ear. And I just inserted myself into the conversation. And I just loved your outlook. I love the fact that firstly, you weren't afraid to challenge. Like, and that's the thing. Like, I think in social situations, people are just so mute, and it gets really dull because we all have the pleasantries. You weren't rude in any way, but you would challenge someone's idea and thoughts and be like, but why do you think that? Like, what is that based on? And I just thought, this is great. I need to have you on my podcast.
But don't you, sorry?
No, go on.
Don't you think we spend so much time doing that, marking time and nodding our heads and, just, and how many times have you just sat there saying, oh, if I told you what I really thought, and then ask yourself, why don't you? Because essentially what you're doing then is you're lying. I think it would make it more hectic, because you are. You now say, oh yeah, no, I agree. You're lying. Lying to yourself, lying to the person you're talking to. And so you want to try, it's one of the things you want to try hard not to be, as a liar. That's such a good thing. So, now speak your truth. And you know what? Sometimes you'll get, and I mean, I've rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way, a long list, because I tend to be slightly unfiltered. But, that's who I am, and they'll always have people always know where they stand, what I think, and my truth to something. And it's never out there to offend. It's never out there to ridicule or belittle, but, I have my point of view, and I'm happy to express it. And I've learned not to be that fear of speaking out. I don't have that anymore. And I'm very thankful that I don't. I used to have it.
Okay, you used to? That's almost hard to
Yeah,
because I think like the person I know now versus, I can't even picture you being filtered. I can't even picture you like, being afraid to speak your mind. When did that change?
Yeah. I had a sort of an epiphany moment in around 2007. I just sold all my businesses in London. I'd had a bit of a burnout as well. I was just done, and I spent a year learning about Mike, learning what got me to the space of burnout. Learning what it was that who I was and what I want to do, and getting that self-awareness, getting really in touch with who I am. And it was one of the best things I ever did, was invest that year in just learning about myself. I just took time off. I didn't work. I had coffee with people. I just spent that time just doing things I want to do, but really listening to me and who I was and who I am, and getting away from anything that was just negative, that pulled me down as far as possible. It was a tough time. It's a tough thing to do, but so important. And and you don't have to do it as extremely as I did. I mean, I tend to do everything extremely. You have to take a whole year off, but spend that time. Do that half hour in the morning where you listen to yourself. You'll wake up in the morning and your mind will first of all jump on the thing that you shouldn't have done yesterday. It's the first thing you'll think of every time. It'll grab you and go, hey, you know what? That thing we did yesterday, not so good. And just listen to it, and then check in and say, well, why did I do it? And just examine it, not from a sense of feeling bad or feeling good, or just want to find out why. And every now and again, you'll learn something, as to something about yourself that and then suddenly you don't end up having to do those things anymore, because you get rid of that fear.
Jeez, I mean, it's actually intense taking a year and committing it to self. And when you think about how much people will spend to not have to spend time alone, whether that's on friends, whether that's on, drugs, whether that's on whatever it is to escape themselves, and taking that and actually spending time with yourself and saying, who am I? Because every human being's got wounding in some way, right? All of us have like either like something where we feel we're not worthy, we're not good enough, we're not lovable, whatever it may be, and wherever it may stem from, that causes this like thing within us that we have a barrier to ourselves. And I think that's why we do become so filtered in public settings, right? Because it's like, I don't know if this is my opinion, so I can't really say that, self that actually allows you the confidence to be able to articulate yourself in a way that's not disrespectful, but that is still your truth.
But I mean, I just touched on something which you said there. A year is an extreme thing to invest in learning about yourself. Try investing a whole life into not learning. Try investing a whole life into never accessing that, into never speaking your truth, into never letting or not even letting yourself know how you feel. Never being honest with yourself. That's extreme. Spent investing a whole life into never being the person you should have been. You know, that would really ruin my day.
Yeah, that gave me chills. That gave me so many chills. And I feel like it gave me chills because in reality, Mike, you are a part of the achievers in society, right? You are part of this group of people that just like, you know, your Jeff Bezos, your Elon Musks, your people who do things in the world, you know, they have like this energy and
Whoa. As defined by what?
No,
Money?
just defined on like how you go through life. I'm not even defining it based on necessarily just, you know, the businesses necessarily. I'm defining it more on the sense of that self-investment, that willingness to bet on yourself, and that willingness to target a goal and really go for it. You know, I think so many people are afraid of that. So many people they want it on a, like, you know, on a heart space. They're like, I really want this. They can sit down with you and say, Mike, I really want this. But they don't want it, you know, because there's just so much attached to it, you know. So it's
or again, we go back to something. It's just and it's I'm sorry, I'm so boring in saying the same thing, but that's all it is. And as soon as you recognize that and say, hey, you know, I'm just going to do it afraid, you'll break it. So when you say achievers, you know, achievers, the measurements that societies use to say what is an achievement, what is a good thing, or in my opinion, pardon me, usually bullshit. Okay, because it's usually external, superficial things. You know, there's a, you know, through one of our charities, I've seen, you know, women raising 3 kids where she's got no job. That's an achievement. You know, I couldn't do that. I'd run for the hills. So, you know, let's get away from, you know, achievement of saying we all want to be these super characters. I mean, most of them are narcissistic bastards. So, who you are as yourself and what you can be, those, you know, achievement is that's it, just, you know, getting away from your fear. It's the biggest achievement you can ever make, and it beats anything that most of these big names will ever do. It beats anything most of them will ever do. Just being true to yourself, breaking your fear and doing it afraid, and going out and just taking that first step, so far ahead of anything else. It's worth 20 Rolexes. You know, it's like, to me, that gives me serious, like gives me serious good vibes. You know, the rest of the stuff is just, you know, it doesn't last. It doesn't mean anything. And what people always think is, I can't be that. What you forget is what you can be. You know, forget about what you can't. What can you be? Those are all those talents we spoke about earlier that are sitting there waiting, knocking on the door, saying, "Hey, let me out."
Wow. And this is actually the exact conversation we were kind of having, which was exactly that, right? Do we define goodness based on wealth? How do you define what a good person is versus what a bad person is, right? Because I think the conversation had then leaned to someone saying, oh, you invest money for all these high net worth individuals, which means you must run into a lot of bad people. And that's when you said, well, how do you define bad and good? And so, so it was like, ooh, this is my kind of conversation. And Mike, I want to ask
Get your beer and couple. Here we go.
You know, because what do you define actually as bad and good? Like in your definition of what is someone, if I had to come to you and say, Mike, the person you're working with is a terrible person, you know, how would you like say, like, what are your metrics for someone you're willing to work with and someone you're not?
I think the first thing that you got to get into is that, you know, everybody has a bad day. Okay, we don't know, and you don't usually know what's happened in that person's day that day, and that's the first. You know, people say, "Oh, so and so is just so terrible," but their dad died that morning. You don't know. Okay, that's the thing. So, you know, for me, good and bad. First of all, it's not my place to judge. I don't get to say, "Hey, you're a good or a bad person." You know. Look, if you're going to kill a whole lot of people, then I'm probably not going to be that much want to hang out with you and be your friend. But I don't get that right to judge. I don't think anybody gets a right to judge anybody. I don't think you have that right. But I think what you've got to do is you've got to say, you know, is that person real? Are they true to themselves? You know, are they giving you the best representation they can? So if I've got somebody at work, you know, are they giving it their all? You know, have I done everything I can? My business partner always said to me, before we fire somebody, can you look yourself in the mirror and say, 100%, have you done everything you can to make them succeed? Usually you can't say yes. have you done everything you can to bring out the best in that person? Have you given everything you, as opposed to what did they do? They didn't do enough. They didn't. What have you done? Did you create the space? So, to go out and say, hey, they're bad or they're good or that, I don't think that's the question. Go back to yourself. What did you do? Because that's the person you're responsible to. Everybody else is just, Candice, if you're a good, bad, rich, poor, whatever person, my life will be the same. My life will be the same. No matter what. What I do will change and influence my life. So that's what I've got to be worried about. I can choose what I can do. The one thing I can do is decide who I associate with. And that's just generally about, people I like and don't like all of us. I try and associate with people who help me think, make me grow, so they add to my life as opposed to take away from it. And I've cut some pretty significant people out of my life who were damaging. I found that every time they were in my life, it was just damaging to my soul. So I removed them. So so that's the choices you can take, but that's again is about being true to yourself. It's not about that person. It's about being who you are. That makes sense.
Oh yeah. So much sense. Like I was just like, you like transported my mind. I was just like, yep, wisdom. And I love that because it does come back to what it seems like is your core value, which is like, you can only control you, right? Everyone else is just an extension of your external environment, but how you show up, how you decide. And I think it also, do you think, or do you believe that when you are responsible for yourself, then you make better judgments on those around you. So not judgments in sense of like, you bad, you this, but you not good for me, so whether you're good out there or you're not good out there, in my life, you don't serve as a good influence, right?
Completely. And that's where it gets back to, we talked about being able to say that to somebody. It's also that space to be able to say, there's one of the things that if I said to you right now, so what, I actually don't care about that. Something you told me. People go, beg your pardon, you can't say that. But I don't. I don't have time. I don't have the space right now, so I can't devote any energy to it. Can you imagine if we were that frank with each other? People get offended left, right, and center, but that's actually the most amazing thing to give to them and say, hey, you know what, for this, I can't be there right now. I can't give you that caring you need right now. I can't generate that energy for you right now. Or I actually don't want to. Or I don't want to. Oh, you're horrible. You mean? No, I don't choose to give it to you. There's lots of other things I can give you energy on. That, no. So now, it's harsh, but it's the truth. Because what happens when you don't tell somebody that, you won't actually give them the energy anyhow. Now they'll be expecting you that you should have done something. Then they'll get angry and you'll say, oh, they're a bad person.
Oh, man, that like just hit the mark on, because I'm currently on a journey of, getting to know myself and also establishing boundaries and learning when I want to say no and when I want to say yes. And there's this great book. It's called, what is it? Something. I completely forgot it now, but I'll put it in the link. And basically what he speaks about is when if something is not a hell yes to you, it's a no. And so how he puts it is, if you are saying yes to things you don't have the emotional, financial, whatever it is, capacity for, what you're essentially doing is you're saying no to yourself. And therefore what you're saying is, I will always prioritize others before I prioritize me. And even though it seems self-sacrificial and it seems like, oh, I'm being this righteous person, when you in your grave, no one's going to say, oh my gosh, she died because she was trying to save. People are going to be like, why did she wear herself out?
Yeah. Or what's even saddest, they probably won't say anything at all because they'll always carry on with their lives.
Oh,
and you'll have done it, and you'll have done it all for nothing.
Mike, you are like, honestly, I need to.
What happens? I mean, honestly, when people die, people don't do that. They sit down, they go, hey, I miss him, and I'm so sad. They don't go, he just spent his life doing the wrong thing. They don't do that. They just move on. It's very sad, but it's true. So all that stuff that you do, nobody cares except you. So do the things you care about. If you're the only person who cares, so make sure it's something you care about.
Oh, wow. Do you have a future in motivational speaking by any chance, or?
I don't know. Maybe it's the next version. I don't know. It's the next version of the
It
another
should be in
stage.
your
I
back
don't know.
pocket. Put it in your back pocket. Just another one of those things I'm adding to your hat of tricks, you know?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It's a very nice compliment. Thank you.
No, but Mike, seriously, I mean, I just looked at the time and I was like, holy camoli. Like there's so much, like literally, I've just got a list of things I really wanted to ask you, but I'm like, I actually just want to get you back. I really want you to come back because I think you're just such a wall of wisdom and you're someone who just, you share so generously of yourself and it's just such a beautiful thing to be a part of in a conversation. So
Thank you.
I want to say, no, thank you. I want to say thank you. I mean, that interview was everything I hoped for and so much more. There were so many questions I wanted to ask Mike, and there were so many things that I was like, okay, we're going to go in this direction. But as usual, I love letting the conversation flow and steer us where it needs to. Mike dropped so many gems of wisdom. Number one, I will be waking up 30 minutes earlier. That is for sure. Dedicating time to getting to know yourself. That was such a big standout for me. And probably, the part where he speaks about really knowing yourself well enough to know when you can say yes and when you want to say no. Oh my goodness, those were just some of the standouts of the interview for me. But let me know, what were yours? Because I know there were a lot. Thank you so much for joining us and listening to this incredible conversation. And I look forward to coming to you next week.